Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's amazing guest returning again is Ash from That Preston Journalist. I always get that, emphasize that. My wife was laughing at that. She saw our video when we discussed why you called your channel That Preston Journalist, and she was laughing, going, I say that all the time, that, and meaning him or her. And so yeah, she found that quite funny. Um, let's jump straight in with our chat about politics. So let's have a chat about predictions and what trouble is down the line coming for these political parties. Let's do it in reverse order. Let's discuss Reform UK first, then Tories, then Labour. What can you foresee coming down the pipeline to damage Reform UK?
The council elections in a nutshell. At the moment, I think Reform UK are pushing at an open door. Things couldn't be going much better for them. All the main parties are in complete freefall, and there's nobody opposing the government, leaving Reform UK, although they've only got 5 MPs, leaving them with a massive gap to simply attack the government whenever they want on anything they want. So it's really good at the moment. The local elections is going to be the biggest make or break moment for Reform UK, in my opinion. Now, I know people don't take local politics too seriously, and they don't people don't always vote in it. But when we have these county elections next year and there's thousands of seats up for grabs, Reform UK need to prove they're a serious party by doing what the Lib Dems do. As Farage said himself, actually, you've got to make some sort of impact in local areas, setting up local associations and have that base of activists in each area that's going to campaign for your councillors and get people elected. And then, of course, that leads to people campaigning for parliamentary candidates. And at the moment, Reform UK are seriously lacking when it comes to winning council seats, and that will prove to be a massive barrier for them. So we'll have to see what happens, of course, but they've got to start getting some presence on the ground, because even though the Lib Dems are completely hopeless, they are very, very good at having a presence on the ground, people that campaign and leaflet and talking to residents, and it wins them seats as proved in the last election.
And that sort of infrastructure, that ground army, as they call it, can take decades and decades to build and organize and to build the infrastructure, the contact procedures, to have the right people running that association in Bolton or Wigan or wherever they are. It takes time, and Reform are basically starting from scratch, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, but I think they've made a really good start. I mean, winning 5 seats in the general election was a good start. I've just been looking at some polling before we came on here. Reform UK have now got a better net favourability than the Labour Party. They're on 28%, whereas the Labour Party is now slumped down to 27%. So they are going in the right direction. As I said, in many ways, they're pushing at an open door, but they've got to start using that advantage. They've got to start pushing it to win more council seats, or win any council seats. That's the main thing. Take control of the council, maybe. Pick your battles. There's no point throwing money in different areas that you're not going to win. Pick your battles well, and then make sure you can get some council seats and maybe even take control of the council. Look where UKIP used to win, for example. You're bound to get some support in those areas, and that's really where they should be looking, in my opinion.
So I'm sure they're probably doing that. Can you foresee any home goals with Reform UK? Them supporting something they shouldn't, or making silly mistakes which they shouldn't? Can you see any forced errors coming down the line?
I can't see anything at the moment that's going to definitely bring them down or knock them down in the polls. At the moment, like I said, things are going okay. I mean, there's always skeletons in these people's closets. Let's make no mistake about it. So there could be something that could come out in the future. You've got big mouths in there, like Lee Anderson, for example, who tends to run away with himself sometimes. And as much as I like the guy, he does get caught up in himself and sometimes makes some stupid gaffes. So, the only problem I've got, I think, with Reform UK is that they've lost a lot of the right as well. So whether you like people such as Tommy Robinson, for example, is completely up to the individual. But they've completely disowned anybody like that. There's other people on the right as well who slam Reform UK because they want nothing to do with them. And you've got to find a way. You've got to find a way to unite the right, and that's the only way that really they're going to challenge all these parties that are on the left, which is basically every party at the moment that's inside the Commons, apart from Reform UK. And they've got to start getting people who vote UKIP or any like even heritage party people, things like that. They might be small, but they've got to try and get these people on side and get them to vote for Reform UK and get behind one banner rather than having all these little individual parties, because it's just all they're going to do is split each other's vote and get 0 seats once again.
Yes, I agree. I'm not sure how Reform achieve that. Reform are really worried about. I mean, they've already labelled as far right, racist, Hitler, Nazis, and they batter away the best they can. But we're all called that now. I've come to the conclusion now that far right just means English patriot. That's all far right now means is an English patriot. And I think they're cautious and rightly so about giving their enemies ammunition against them. Look at you now, you're just like Tommy Robinson. Da, 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 da. I'm not saying it's right or wrong what they're doing, but I can understand them being cautious. But at some stage, you've got to throw caution to the wind and you have to go, no, we're a party for every British patriot in the country. And some will be a little further right than us, and some will be further left than us, and some will be mental. But do you know what? We don't discriminate, and we've got the Mental Health Act in this country. We can't discriminate people on mental health. So why should political parties? It's about containing it, controlling it, and being able to separate it. Now that's a big ask, and I've not got the answers to that. But that is a valid criticism of Reform, and it's the criticism that many people write to me about and message me about, that they're not right enough. They're not tough enough on immigration. And my answer to them is they don't have to be that tough yet. They just have to be tougher than everybody else. There's no point pushing your boat too far out and leaving all that room for the Tories to swim in. You want the Tories to jump ahead of you so you can jump ahead of them. And it's that race.
It is, yeah. And funny enough, this label far right and Nazis and all that stuff, I think it's actually one of the biggest weapons they can use. I think it's actually a strength because let's face it, anybody right of Stalin now gets called a Nazi. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Whether it's you or me or anybody else who just speaks a bit of common sense or doesn't speak from from myself, I speak from a centre right point of view. So, all of a sudden I'm a Nazi. The fact is that people who use these terms, which is even people in the government, which is pathetic, all it does is downgrade those terms. The word Nazi used to mean something. The word fascist used to mean something. The word far right used to mean, the phrase far right used to mean something. Now it's just in one ear out the other because it's used that much that nobody even listens to it anymore. And every time the establishment get on Reform's back and call them this and call them that, reform and call them fascists and stuff, all it does is the poll ratings go up. So in that respect, Reform don't have to do a great deal. They just allow these moronic students and the students we've got in government as well to keep calling them far right and just sit back because the vast majority of this country is centre right and it is a conservative country. And Reform UK will continue to grow in the polls. And it's just fortunate for Reform that the establishment are too thick to realise that. And they support these people, these students who march with stupid queers for Palestine banners and stuff like that. Get a bloody grip of yourselves. You don't have the first clue what you're talking about. But just leave Labour and the Tories and all that to march with them. And then Reform UK can do their own thing. Like you said, don't give the Tories loads of room. For some reason, Jenrick's trying to go further to the right than Reform UK are. But everyone knows that when he gets into power or gets into to be the leader of the Conservative Party, he's not going to implement any of those policies anyway.
Yeah, exactly. We've heard it all before, haven't we? For 14 years, we've heard it all before, and nothing ever comes to pass on that. So let's jump to the Tories. Last time we talked about the Tories leadership with the two final contestants. What do you think are the problems coming down the line for the Tory party while in opposition?
I don't think they need to worry about Labour. I think the Tories' main problem is actually the Tories. They've got such a divided party. I mean, they've always had, your centrists and your people who are more to the right and that, which is fine. But now before the general election, there was 5 or 6 different factions working against each other inside the party. And although a lot of those MPs have gone, you've still got these different factions working against each other. There was even rumours that some of these lefty Tory Tory MPs to the left of the party were actually going to boycott the vote because they see Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick as too right wing to vote for. The biggest problem is going to be uniting this bunch of entitled people, and I'm afraid I wouldn't want that job. I don't care how much it pays because it is one of the hardest jobs you're going to have. And straightening this party out to be fit for a general election in the next 5 years, to my mind, is near impossible.
Yeah, I think to do that, you would need grit and determination. I think Kemi Badenoch has got grit and determination. That's definitely in her personality. Robert Jenrick, I've no idea if he's got any grit or determination. But the Tories need a Thatcher for the modern era. That's what they're crying out for. Someone with a vision, someone who's not for turning, someone who will take on their enemies, their opposition, their challenges, take it on face to face, call people out. Um, Not willing to listen to opinion polls and then change your policies based on this week's opinion polls. It's about selling the country a vision and selling your party a vision. We haven't got that at the moment, but I'm sure that might come in the next couple of years.
But like you said, it's going to take that strong leader. And as you said previously, Badenoch and Jenrick won't make it to the next general election anyway. I tend to agree with you on that. But then who's going to be, are either of them strong enough? I mean, one thing Boris got right, similar to what Thatcher did, when Boris was trying to get his Brexit deal through Parliament and stuff, and people kept voting against him, his own party kept voting against him. I think this was more Dominic Cummings than Boris. But as soon as someone voted against him, whether it was the most senior Tories like Ken Clarke, that was it. Whip's taken off you. See you later. And he actually gave away his own small majority to work in a minority administration just to get these people out of the party. And it was a stroke of genius, why I don't think it was Boris. I think it was Dominic Cummings that did all that. And it worked, and it got the public on side. He had to be held hostage for a couple of months in Parliament by people like Corbyn, of course. But kicking these people out is what had to be done. And if Jenrick or Badenoch have to boot some of these people out and sit there in an even smaller party and then fight by-election after by-election to try and get some decent Tory MPs in there, then that's what has to be done.
And it's actually easier kicking people out of your party, MPs out of your party when you're the opposition, and then when you've only got a small amount of seats anyway. They could kick 10, 20, 30 MPs out of their party. Well, it makes no difference because they're still irrelevant, but it sends the message to everybody else. It sends the message to people who are willing to stand the next election for the Tories that this is what we're about. You know what we're about now, so don't be joining us if you're more comfortable in the Lib Dems. Don't be joining us if you're more comfortable in the Greens. You join the Tories if you like what we stand for. And at the moment, last 14 years, the Tories have stood for whatever you want us to stand for.
Yeah, if you don't like my principles, I've got others. That's been the mantra of the party, hasn't it, for all these years? And I mean, I could see Badenoch. I think you're right. I could see her booting people out, but you've got to make an example of one of them. Yeah, you're a big hitter, haven't you? Though there aren't many big hitters left in the party now, are there? But you'd have to make a big example, like I said, like Boris did with Ken Clarke, who was the father of the house at the time and the most senior Tory MP. You boot someone like that out, and everyone else sits up and takes notice and think, if he's going to get rid of him, I've got no chance. He'll get rid of me as well. I best toe the line.
Exactly, because I want to keep that £92,000 a year salary.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're not in one of the big parties or in any party, you're sitting as an independent, the chances of getting your seat back are extremely slim, unless you're like a Jeremy Corbyn that's been there for 35 years, whatever it is.
And £92,000 is a very big incentive.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And not to mention all the other benefits you get with it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's pivot over to the government in power, Labour. We've talked about Keir Starmer several times, so we can mention Keir Starmer, but what do you think are the issues coming down the pipeline for Labour themselves?
It's such a broad question, isn't it? I mean, there's so many things going on for Labour. I believe the biggest problem for Labour going forward is going to be Reform UK. But Labour's biggest problem is, of course, the PR, the communication, the messaging they've been putting out ever since they got into power is shambolic. Whoever their PR team is needs sacking and replacing as soon as possible. But we've
Here's a question for you. What does this Labour government stand for? I've no idea.
Well, I think they're.
I've no idea.
It is hard to say what they stand for. I mean, they're a lot harder left than what they tried to make out during the general election campaign, of course. They are more of a. Actually, I go as far as to say they are more of a Jeremy Corbyn government than what they ever wanted to tell people during the election campaign. We've almost ended up with a Jeremy Corbyn government here, and nobody wanted that. But it's obviously clearly anti-business, high tax, low growth, which is ironic because the biggest phrase they keep using is "we're going for growth," when I'm afraid they're not, because all they're doing is taxing the backside out of businesses with NI contributions, etc., which is going to make businesses hire less people. So what's going to be Labour's biggest problem going down the road is the fact that I think inflation will probably end up going up again because of all these public sector pay rises that they've given out and continue to give out. And then once the economy starts tanking like that, interest rates go up again for people. Then that's going to be once people see their bank accounts going down and there's less money in their wallets. Then I'm afraid that's what's going to bring them down.
Yeah, you mentioned national insurance there. For people who don't understand national insurance, so you've got a job, you pay tax, and you pay national insurance. It's on your wage slip. NI, you pay so much. What most people don't know is your employer, your boss, also pays extra national insurance for you. So it's about 13%. So whatever you earn, your gross wage working for your boss has to pay an extra 13% in national insurance tax to the government. That's a tax on your job. So before he can employ you, he has to raise an extra 13% of your wage to give the government. Most people don't understand that. They think national insurance is only what me and you pay in our wage slip. But no, this is the employer's national insurance, and it's about 13% at the moment. And it looks like that's going up.
As you said, it's a tax on jobs. It is literally, for someone to go to work, it's literally a tax. As if this company, whoever you work for, whatever industry you're in, is already paying enough tax, whether that be capital gains, income tax, you name it. They're paying all sorts of taxes. And then what they're going to do now is put it up again. And this, whatever company it may be, are going to say, right, well, I'm not going to hire 400 people this year because I'm going to have to pay extra amount of tax. 13% is going to go up to God knows what. But, right, I'm going to have to halve that now. So that's 200 more people that are on the dole rather than could have actually had a job doing something somewhere. And this is not going for growth. This is the complete opposite of going for growth. It's just, I don't see the economy recovering under these people at all. It's going to get worse and worse. They are literally trying to borrow their way out of trouble. Now, usually it takes a Labour government 5 years, or it took, Blair's government 10 years to start running out of other people's money. But now they're doing it. They've done it within a few months. We're already borrowing more than we can afford to borrow because interest rates have been low. But unfortunately, people keep saying to me, oh, well, the national debt doesn't matter because most of it's borrowed from the Bank of England. I'm like, yeah, but in Bank of England keep raising interest rates. So the interest on that debt is absolutely astronomical. I forget what it was now. I saw the figure once. The amount of debt that we pay, the amount of interest, we pay on our national debt is frightening. And there's no sign of this debt coming down. The Tories tried to bring it down. A lot of rubbish. They didn't manage it. And Labour are only going to make it worse. I think we're at nearly 2 trillion now. I think it's over 100% of GDP. I think national debt is now. And it's unbelievable.
Yeah. And there's no end to it. I think we need to wait until we get the budget, and then we'll see how bad this government's going to be. Because at the moment, even though it doesn't seem like a honeymoon, they've actually had a honeymoon at the moment because they've not had to make that many difficult decisions. The budget is where it all comes out, where they actually have to explain who they're going to rob and what services they're going to cut. And then we'll start seeing that. And not a lot, the support they've got left will crumble even more when they go, right, yeah, you're not touching my income tax, but you're touching everything else. And I've got to pay tax for all those things. and you're giving less money to here, or you are giving more money, but now you're printing more money and borrowing more money. So interest rates are going up. Everything I buy is going up in the shops. There is no simple answers to this. The simple answer is what you do when you're running your household. And what you do is you try not to spend more money than you're earning, because when you do, that's called debt. And that debt always wants paying back. And the following month, you've got to spend less on your house because you've got to service that debt and pay some of that debt off. So what do? You bother some more money. Well, the following month, you've got to pay more of that debt off now. And it's a Ponzi scheme that eventually collapses where you've got no more money to pay the debt off, that you keep borrowing extra money to pay the debt.
I saw another rumor today about these. I mean, it's allegedly going to be £40 billion worth of tax rises. And I saw another thing today saying that Rachel Reeves is on about taxing the wealthiest again, like a temporary tax, they're calling it, to fund some green projects. I'm like, this is unbelievable. We've already got millionaires leaving this country in their droves. These are the I don't care what you think about millionaires, but these are the people that have businesses. These are the ones who create jobs. These are the ones who pay people's wages. So you kick them all out. That's it, isn't it? The jobs go with them to another country, like Tata Steel have done, taking the business over to India. Completely, honestly stupid. And then you've got the non-doms. Labour's figures said they were going to raise so many billion out of the taxing the non-doms. Labour's figures in the manifesto was based on 2% of non-doms leaving this country. Something like 19% have already left Britain and taken all their assets with them. And even more, and I think it's a further 25-30% are planning to leave in the next 12 months. So all they're doing is having anybody who's got any wealth whatsoever and the ability to create wealth by jobs, taking all their money out of this country, and then we're going to be left with nothing. Then where are they going to get the tax take from? The VAT on schools, private schools. It's been revealed now that all these, because they've had to register for VAT, all these private schools can also claim any tax back that would have been due over the last 10 years for any projects they've done on these schools. So again, the tax take from this VAT is going to be nothing, because all these schools are going to bump up their expenses for anything they've done in the last 10 years. Who can blame them? Anyone do the same? So the tax take, again, is going to be nothing. This is ideology over country. It's party over country, and it's their own socialist, narrow-minded views of this country over what's best for the economy and best for the people.
Yeah, it's politics of envy. How dare you be successful? How dare you? You need punishing. And at the same time, most of Labour's top politicians are all extremely rich and all extremely successful. You know, £1 million houses, many of them are millionaires. And yet they talk about other people who are millionaires who earned that money by building businesses where they got all their money, usually by politics. And they criticize them and want to tax them. And what we don't understand, or what they don't understand, is it's so easy in this world now to move and take all your money with you somewhere else. This was happening in the 1970s with the brain drain. People with money, it was a lot harder in the 70s to move around the world. It's extremely easy now. And it's going to be more money and more people will leave if we keep punishing the wealth creators. Now, the wealth creators need to pay their taxes, and we need to have an eye on the wealth creators, because some of them are sneaky fuckers and some of them will work out how to pay as little as possible. But that's down to a competent HMRC and government to make sure we're taxing them correctly at the right amount and making sure there's no loopholes. That's their job to do that. So it isn't just wealth creators and businesses are good. Of course, they will not pay if they can get away with it. We need to stop that. But we've also then got to stop this government penalising anybody with aspiration who wants to create business. I've got some friends who are in their 60s now, and they're going to be retiring very soon. And both of them said to me, they don't necessarily want to retire, but the hassle of working now and running businesses and setting up new businesses and the amount of tax they've got to pay and the bureaucracy and the paper forms, they're saying, I've had enough. I could carry on for another 10 years, but I've had enough. I'm just going to retire. These are the wealth creators.
Yeah, exactly. And why is it that Labour don't care about these people? Because none of them have ever run their own businesses in their lives. They've all come from spoilt backgrounds. They've all come from the public sector. That's why they don't give a toss about the private sector. It's all about the public sector for them. They've all come from NGOs. They've all come from trades unions. In Starmer's case, they've come from the DPP. That's all these people are bothered about. They've never known a life in the private sector. They've never worked in the private sector. They've never had to achieve anything. All that happens in the public sector is you fail and you get promoted, and that's that. They think that is the real world. When if they did a proper day's work for once, any of them, they'd soon realise that wasn't the case. The only one that's worked in an independent company, it's supposed to be independent, isn't it? The Bank of England, was Rachel Reeves, and she was a mid-level employee. She was booted out. She also got done for misuse of her company credit card. She's a complete fraudster. I wouldn't trust this woman with a calculator. Honestly, none of them. I don't trust any of them to do the right thing for this country. They've never, ever done a decent day's work in their entire lives between them.
And I'd say the Bank of England basically is an arm of government anyway.
Yeah, but they call it independent,
Yeah,
don't they?
they do. There's many organisations that call themselves independent, and we all know damn well they're not independent.
Yeah.
Ash, cheers for that. Let's do this again soon. And just before we go, let me plug my new book, England's My England, available on Amazon now. So if you're watching this and you want to understand why we're in this mess and what you can do as an individual to help this country to survive, this is the book for you. Check it out on Amazon. That's a plug. Cheers, Ash. I'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, cheers, Nick. Thank you very much.
Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers. I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.